what's up everyone? This is Music Tech Help Guy, and in this video, I have 5 more creative arpeggiator tricks for you. That last video I did was so popular and I got so many comments asking to do more, so I'm gonna keep doing this until I either run out of arpeggiator ideas or you guys get bored of it. And I think I'll maybe expand this sort of top 5 tricks topic over to some other videos and some other plugins and other MIDI effects and instruments. So let me know what you want to see in the comments below. In this video, I'm going to talk about using the as played mode, the latch mode, the record MIDI effects option, and I have one example where I'll jump into Quick Sampler and I'll use Quick Sampler along with the arpeggiator. Before I get into the tutorial, I want to quickly tell you about the sponsor of today's video, Boombox. Boombox is the ultimate cloud storage solution for music makers, but cloud storage is only one small part of the equation. Designed by music producers for music producers, Boombox offers a suite of features that revolutionize music collaboration. From file storage to time-stamped commenting, every tool is meticulously crafted to enhance your creative process. I love using Boombox to collect mixing feedback from my clients, especially when I'm working with bands and musical groups where each band member has something different to say. Rather than sorting through dozens of emails, I can collect all of my feedback in one place. Visit boombox.io today to get 4 GB of free storage. Okay, so for this first trick, I want to show you how to use this mode right here. This is called as played mode, and there's a few different ways you can use this mode, but my favorite way is using it to build arpeggios that move in a certain note order. You can sort of choose the note order with this mode. So by default, it's going to load up like this, 16th rate up, and then live. You're going to change this over to as played and then grid, and then you can set whatever tempo you want. I'm actually going to go with an 8th note here. Now, there's a pattern I want to play in, and it goes like this. So the chord is this. Of course, it's a monophonic instrument, but it's A, B, C, E. So it's essentially an A minor chord with an added 9 or added second, whatever way you want to look at it. It's really just a melodic passing tone. And then I want to take that same sort of shape, that same melodic idea, and shift it around to different chords. So one way to approach this is to play all of these on the keyboard. You just have to play all of the notes in the order you want them played. So if I went 1, 2, 3, 4, it's going to play them 1, 2, 3, 4. If I went 1, 3, 2, 4, if I went 4, 3, 2, 1, if I go 1 down to the 5 up to the 3, 2, 1, 5, 3, 2. And then the next chord. So one way you can do this is just to use your MIDI controller and play in those chords and just really quickly press each note down in the order you want it played. But if you're not great with a keyboard, you can also just use the piano roll editor. What I'm going to start off with is just my bass chords that I want to use. Now, what I can do here is I can just lay out the general shape of the chord I want. So A, C, E, but I'm adding in that second. And then here on the F chord, I'm going to do F, A, C, B. So get the rest of the chords put in the root position or inversion that you like. And here I generally like to make sure that each of the chords has the same number of notes. So all of my chords have 4 total notes. Right now, it's not going to play these in the correct order. It's going to do the same thing that these other modes do. It's going to pick the note order, based on what mode you're in. But if you're in that as played mode, you can sort of delay the rhythm of each note. So again, if I wanted A first, then I want E second, and I'm going to go to division mode here. And you don't have to do this at the same rate of the arpeggiator. I'm using 16th notes here. Although it should be said that you have to enter in the note order at the rate of the arpeggiator or faster. So in my case, this was an 8th note arpeggio. I'm entering these as 16th notes, so that should work out fine. You don't even have to put the note orders on the grid. You can just make sure that each note enters in the order you like just by quickly trimming the front of each note and not even paying attention to the grid if you don't want to. Okay, so after a little bit of work of just sort of offsetting the start of those notes, we end up with the arpeggiation that we want. And again, the arpeggiator is following the order of the notes as they're inputted from first to last for each chord. And you can also play around with the octave range here. You can do some different things with the octave range that you weren't actually playing down here. It'll just shift some of the notes up an octave. And I'm pretty sure the variation is just sort of switching up which note is the first note. So it may shuffle up your pattern a bit if you use the variations. And then with some instruments, you can come in here to options and pull down the note length. So that just lets you shorten those note lengths if you want. And you can also add swing to your pattern if you want it to be a swung pattern. Okay, so for this next trick, I'm going to show you how to use the as played mode along with latch mode. And we're going to use this along with the record MIDI to track here function. In order for this to be here, you have to have Logic 10.7.5 or higher. So what this does is it allows you to record in your arpeggiation creations as MIDI. So the notes are just there, and you can just bypass the arpeggiator after you're done. Now, you can do this without latch mode, but what latch mode does is it latches onto all of the notes that you play in as played mode. So if I turn this on and I play that same pattern, you can see I can just completely remove my hand from the keyboard. I don't have to use a sustain pedal. I don't have to hold down the chord, and it latches onto that chord until I play another chord. And when you're done, just turn latch off. So this is a really cool way to play in those patterns and not have to hold down the keys. So it just makes the performing part of it a lot easier. It gives you some time to think in between the chords. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to the arpeggiator and select record MIDI to track here, turn on latch. And what I'm going to do here is just give myself a couple of bars to get myself in the groove. And I'm just going to hit record. I'm going to play each of those chords, and I'm going to let the latch mode extend each chord for me so I don't have to hold them down. So I can turn off latch, I can bypass the arpeggiator, and what this has done is it's essentially printed or recorded that exact arpeggiation motion directly into a new MIDI clip. So now I have the arpeggiated effect sort of baked into the MIDI recording rather than just being chords, and letting the arpeggiator do the work. Now you don't actually have to bypass the arpeggiator here because all of the effects before this option will not be interpreted in real time, but I just like to bypass it just to remind myself that that's how I created this. Okay, so this next one I know I've shown on the channel before, but I want to show it again because I just think it's super helpful, and it's especially helpful for, again, for people who don't really play keyboard very well or don't know all of their chords or just maybe don't have the muscle memory to play the chords. And so one thing I like to do with the arpeggiator is I like to use the chord trigger before the arpeggiator. And what you can do is you can either create your own custom chord presets. You can use learn mode to type in your trigger keys and your output notes. If you want to see a more detailed tutorial of the chord trigger, I do have a full tutorial of this plugin. But for this video, I'm just going to go down to multi, and I'm going to go to keyboard voicings, and I'll go to diatonic. Actually, let's go pop right hand. And so what this will do is by default, it'll load up in C major or A minor. And what this instrument actually does is it allows you to play one note on your MIDI controller, but actually play a full chord. So down here in the orange range, it's just going to play one note at a time. But if I go up an octave, so what this is doing is it's giving you diatonic chords in the key of C major or A minor. Now, fortunately for me, this song is in A minor. If you're not working in A minor, you're going to have to maybe add like a transposer to the track to shift it up or down to the key you want, or just create your own custom chord set here in Chord Trigger. Now, all of these chords, yeah, some of these chords have more than 3 notes, and that's totally fine. But what you're going to end up having to do is go into these and add an extra note, because again, you want, in order for the motion of the arpeggiation to stay consistent, you want each chord to have the same number of notes. So I've got 4, 4, 4. Let's learn that one. Add a 7th in there. So I'm basically just using A minor, G major, F major, E minor. So the 1, 7, 6, 5 chords. But you can change this up in any way you like. So now that I have my chords, I'm just going to add the arpeggiator after the chord trigger, and I'm just going to play single notes. So I'm literally playing one note on my MIDI controller and getting a fully arpeggiated triad. So I'm going to do up, down. Let's try the second variation and second octave range. And what I can do is I can take that and I can either just record in those long tones, or I can type them in if I don't want to play them in with the MIDI controller. Let's try muting this one here. And I'm going to sort of follow that chord progression. And that was A minor, F, G, and then E. So A minor, F, G, E. So 1, 6, 7, 5. And so I'm just going to play those 4 notes. I'm going to hit record and just play those 4 notes and nothing else. Or another way you can go about this is you can use the record MIDI to track here option that I showed you before, And now we're just going to be printing all of these arpeggios into a new MIDI region. I am going to go into the arpeggiator and maybe pull back the note length a touch. Yeah, so let's try that. And there we go. All I got to do is trim that up, and all of those arpeggios are baked into my new MIDI region. Okay, and one last way I want to show you how to use Latch is for chords. So you can use this for things other than arpeggios, and you can use this with and without the chord trigger. Right now, I just have the arpeggiator pulled up on a sampler instrument, and I've created my own grid rhythm down here. The key thing here is you want to make sure that the chords are on for each of the notes where you want to play the full chord. Now, if I were to just hold this, I could do something like that, but I'm going to have to hold each of the chords. With Latch mode, I can just simply play the chord before the first step. So essentially, I need to either change up the chord here or change up the chord here before the first step, and then the following first step will have the chord change. And so again, this is a great way to play in chords if you have the general feel for what the chords are like on the keyboard, but you just struggle with, playing them in real time. Or if we want to take this one step further, you can add in that record MIDI to track option on this, and then we can just bake all of these directly into the MIDI recording. So I'll just turn Latch on again. Let's give this another go. And there we go. All of those rhythms are baked right into the MIDI recording. Okay, so for this next one, I'm going to show you how to use the arpeggiator as sort of like a loop chopper or a vocal chopper. It all depends on what, type of information you add. And for this, we're going to use this along with Quick Sampler. What I will preface here is that this technique will not always work out the way you want it to, and it's going to take a significant amount of toying around with different samples and toying around with Quick Sampler along with the arpeggiator to get something that works. But I'm going to show you the basic process, and then you can just use this to sort of experiment in your own time. First and foremost, you want to start with an audio loop of some kind. It doesn't necessarily have to be from Logic's loop library, but if you do use Logic loops, take a look at the key of the original loop, and then take a look at what key your song is in. What I recommend doing is setting the key of your song. So by default, Logic's goes to C major, but if I drag this E minor loop into my project with the key set to C major, it's actually going to transpose this down to C minor because it only really accounts for the root note. So this song, so far, all the other parts are in the key of A minor. So if I drag this E minor loop in, it's going to automatically transpose it to A minor. And this actually should fit with, the beat that I have here pretty well already. Yeah, other than being a little out of time, the notes sort of match up with the key roughly. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to drag this into a new quick sampler instrument, just like so. I'm actually going to delete the original loop track because I don't need that anymore. And what I recommend doing is coming in here in slice mode and deleting any slice markers that are not on a transient. So some of these are kind of off. So I really just want one slice marker per transient. And you can remove these just by double clicking. And I'll show you how to fix a couple other things in here in just a bit too. Okay, so I got a couple of them off. If you go to snap and set this to transient note, you can snap these directly to the transients. And at the very beginning here, if I look at this very first one, it's a little bit off. So I'm going to pull that back in. Okay, so there's all of my slices. What I recommend doing here is setting the start key to something like C3 instead of C1, and then setting this to white keys. And so basically C3 through G4 are going to trigger each of these notes. So you could use this just like this to create your own melodies. So you could do that if you wanted to. What I'm going to do is add to this the arpeggiator. And I've already in advance come up with a little chopped up rhythm here. So you're going to want to use grid mode. You can use any of the note orders. You can use any of the variations or octave ranges. And what's going to happen now is the arpeggiator is going to trigger the notes inside of Quick Sampler. But I have to just make sure I only use these notes. So the notes I'm playing on the keyboard really mean nothing in terms of what chord is being played in the song. They're simply just trigger keys for the quick sampler. So if I then wanted to, I could come in here and I could take a couple of these shapes here, these patterns. And just change it up a bit and then just record those in. And again, try out different note orders, try out different variations and octaves. For sampled instruments, you're probably not going to be able to go above the second octave range because if you don't have enough slices in the instrument, you're just going to start losing notes. You're just going to get notes that drop out. And then you can add whatever other effects you want to this. Maybe I'll add a little bit of a tape delay to this, maybe a little reverb as well. And again, you can play around with this in any way you like to get, the sound you want. But like I said, it's sometimes tough to get certain samples to work. Like certain loops that have pretty identifiable transients are generally going to work best. Loops that play kind of one note at a time rather than playing chords will generally work best for this. Okay, so those are 5 more arpeggiator tricks in Logic Pro. Let me know if you want to see more of these. I have plenty of ideas for other arpeggiator tips and tricks. If you want to see more of these, videos, please let me know and I'll keep making them. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel to see more content like this. As always, thank you so much for the support, and thanks for watching.